See, the crest resembles me and you, the green and gold, of course, the emu and the roo. Just to feel the felt sends a shiver down your spine. You pinch yourself, you can't believe it's really mine. First session every test, the Aussies can be seen to show their pride, pay respect and don the baggy green. And all the Aussies on the street who understand the game know that if they wore the cap, they would feel the same. Chapter 28. To show their pride, pay respect and don the baggy green. I've been asked to sing at some momentous occasions because of my career, occasions that have become part of our history. But it was a surprise to be asked to sing at the opening of the new Parliament House in 1988. Bob Hawke was the Prime Minister at the time, and one of his staff thought it would be both amusing and appropriate to sing All Australian Boys Need a Shed. I can't say I thought it was appropriate at all, especially with its reference to marijuana, but I couldn't knock back the opportunity to be a part of such an important date in our history, so I agreed to sing The Shed, as long as they would let me sing Raining on the Rock for the Indigenous people of the Tent Embassy. The Indigenous mob and their supporters were right in front of me as I sang, the pond behind me, looking down in remembrance drive towards the Australian War Memorial. It was quite a day. Of course, I was very annoyed that Queen Elizabeth had to be there as a head of state. I thought 2 Parliament Houses later and we still don't have an Aussie as a head of state. It amazes me even today that monarchists will say things like, "Can you imagine Quentin Bryce as our head of state?" Well, yes, I can. What is it with these people? Is it the tall poppy syndrome? Why the hell do they look up to a descendant of a family with a Germanic background as more appropriate than an Australian? A family with a murderous history of greed, plunder, promiscuity. Need I go on? I'm not afraid to say these things. They're not gods. We lay our trust in this lot over an Australian who, if selected by both sides of Parliament, would be intelligent, squeaky clean, hopefully, and well versed in the law of the land. But above all, they'd have a great passion for Australia. Don't tell me the Queen does to the same extent. She is probably tired of the whole debate and wishes we'd get on with being truly independent. We can still call ourselves the Commonwealth of Australia, not the Republic of Australia. We can still have the same ties with England. I'm not an extreme nationalist to the point where I can't see beyond this country, but I do think you have to be proud of your own backyard before you can respect other nations. However, I am very one-eyed when it comes to our national sporting teams. I will lend my support to any one of them if it will help their spirit and will to win. If you ever have the misfortune to sit next to me during a Wallabies game, you'll find that I become terribly anxious when things go wrong, and I go crazy when we score. And at home, I get loud and jump around the room in rage or with excitement. I can't sit still. My passion can be quite annoying and embarrassing. So when Phil Matthews and I read in the newspaper in the late 1990s that Steve Waugh was using True Blue to inspire the Australian cricket team, I was rapt. And what a team we had then, with the likes of Shane Warne, Adam Gilchrist, Glenn McGrath, Darren Lehman and Mark Waugh. So I made it my business to contact Steve and tell him how much I appreciated it. It turned out that all his family were big fans. In fact, his mum and dad came to my concerts at Revesby Workers on a number of occasions. Steve and I became mates. Not that we saw much of each other. If I wasn't on the road, he was. But if we ever run into each other, the friendship is still strong. Steve also kindly accepted the invitation to be part of my This Is Your Life on Channel 9 in 1995. I was stoked he was there. In 1996, I was contracted by Foxtel to do a 13-part series called True Blue Aussies, where I interviewed famous Aussie sportsmen, and Steve was one. It was a highlight to talk with him at the Sydney Cricket Ground and go through all the emotions of a big game. He reckoned my batting style wasn't bad at all when I demonstrated it out in the middle of the ground. I think he was being generous. The SCG was empty, of course. He showed me where everyone sat in the dressing shed and explained a few of the bloke's foibles. While Steve and his team were overseas beating everyone in the '99 World Cup, he and the fellow team member Gavin Robertson sent me some lyrics called the Baggy Green, It was a little rough around the edges, but it didn't take a lot of tidying up to make it flow. However, I didn't have a tune for it when I was invited to be a surprise guest at a welcome home function for the Aussie team's triumphant return to Australia. The function was held at the Crown in Melbourne. The who's who of the Melbourne sporting fraternity was there, including representatives from all the television channels. Meanwhile, I was stuck out the back in the dressing room, twiddling my thumbs and warming up my voice to sing True Blue. I had the refined lyrics of the Baggy Green with me in case they might be handy. Just messing about with the lyrics on my guitar, I discovered that Gavin Robertson, wittingly or unwittingly, had co-written the lyrics to fit Click Go the Shears. You beauty, I thought. I can do something with this tonight. There's a verse about always wearing the baggy green during the first session of a test match that was ideal for Steve to sing. I knew he was tone deaf, but he could just read it. Who cares? It was Steve Waugh. After I sang True Blue, much to Eddie Maguire's surprise, I had the Baggy Green ready to sing. I'd written the words to the chorus for all the lads in the team and handed Steve the words to do his verse. The crowd loved it, and so did the lads. Molly Meldrum was there, networking as usual, and that night he had to have a photo with Steve and me and the World Cup. All of a sudden, Molly was another Mallee boy from Quambatook, which he was, even though he had never admitted it back in my struggling days. Eddie Maguire was so taken by the song, he had me sing it on the footy show on Channel 9 the next evening. I also was given the absolute honour of dining with the team at Crown that night. It was then that I realised how young they all were. I barely got through my entree when my old mate Molly was over my shoulder telling me that we had to record that Baggy Green song the next day. I actually said, "Fuck off, Molly." That didn't put him off because he rang me again when I was at Channel 9 the following night. Eddie said, "Hey, John, Molly's on the phone." I don't think Eddie understood my reaction. "Tell us how you feel, John," he laughed. It wasn't long before we had Steve and Gavin in a recording studio in Sydney with young lads from Steve's old school team in Bankstown singing the Baggy Green. It was great fun recording it. We added a bit of Alan McGilvray's ABC commentary on Don Bradman. I think it gave it character. I also think it's very fitting that there's a Baggy Green song, and I'm proud to have helped my mate Steve achieve a dream. He, more than anyone, has kept the pride of the cap going by reintroducing the tradition of wearing it during the first session of every test match. He doesn't say much, but when he speaks, it's definitely True Blue. And by the way, I reckon he sings about as well as I could return a ball bowled by Mitchell Johnson. I wouldn't even see it. The absolute highlight of my friendship with Steve was when he invited me to be a guest at his corporate box on his final day of Test cricket. The Australian Cricket Board asked if I'd sing True Blue especially for Steve. Is it me and you? Is it Mum and Dad? Is it Steve Waugh too? I also sang the national anthem that day. There I was, out on the Sydney cricket ground saying g'day to Sachin Tendulkar from the Indian team, waiting for the Aussies to come out onto the field. It nearly makes me cry just recalling it. The Australian team walked right past me in single file, and every one of them shook my hand. Wow, what an honour. I don't think I've ever felt more proud. Steve finished his career that day with 100 runs not out. Not even Sir Don could do that. Good on you, Steve. And today the boys wear the Baggy Green much more often than only in the first session. Thanks to Steve Waugh, True Blue has remained part of our Test team's victory celebration. I love following the cricket, just as Grandpa did. He preferred listening to it on the radio, but the television coverage is amazing these days. Being a big fan of Michael Hussey, I was determined to fly down from Queensland for his final Test match in Sydney. I let the team know that I'd love to catch up with Michael the captain after the game. Clark welcomed me with open arms when I turned up with my guitar and sang True Blue for the team, but especially for Mike Hussey. That was the night he handed over the job of singing Under the Southern Cross to Nathan Lyon. Under the Southern Cross is their sacred chant to scream after a victory. What a night that turned out to be. First I sang True Blue with the guitar, and Michael Clark said, "No wetting John's guitar." I thought, what are those bottles of champagne at Mike Hussey's feet for? The coach told me to put away my guitar and pull on a training shirt. Huss invited me into the circle to sing True Blue again while the entire team joined in. Then came the champagne and the beer. I was initiated into the team, or should I say anointed, that night. Well and truly. I couldn't see for about 10 minutes. I doubt anyone else could either. And it blew me away that some of them were fans of my music. It got even better. After enjoying the 4-0 victory of the Aussie cricket team in the 2014 Ashes series, I made sure I was in Sydney for the final test. Once again, I offered my services to sing for the boys, especially if they finished with a whitewash of 5-0. We went to the first 2 days of the Sydney cricket ground but stayed at home on the third day thinking we'd go again on the fourth day, but our boys finished the Poms off by the end of the third day. What a thrashing. I told Gavin Dovey, the team manager, I'd be on call for whenever they wanted me. I arrived at the shed about 9 p.m. First, I ran into Darren Lehman, Boof, the new successful Aussie team coach. We'd met before when he was part of the team under Steve Waugh's captaincy. A couple of the lads told me that Darren had taught them to relax and enjoy themselves on the ground. I always thought he was a top bloke and a real Aussie. What a job he's done. I met a number of the English team too. They hung around until about 10 p.m. They were good blokes. I had to sing True Blue twice that night, as well as Home Among the Gum Trees and even Old Man Emu. The boys had a great time singing along. Then came Under the Southern Cross, led by Nathan Lyon, followed by a 10-minute shower of champagne and beer. I was ready this time. I had a fresh shirt in my guitar case. In these circumstances, I'm just a punter like everyone else, and these experiences make me feel wonderful. I met a couple of new players who weren't in the team on the Mike Hussey Day, and I was surprised and absolutely delighted to learn that Shane Watson and his family were huge fans, and so were Ryan Harris and George Bailey. No Aussie could enjoy this more than me. I just feel blessed. Fuck being a world star. It doesn't get any better than this. When Ray Martin approached me in 1998 to write a tribute to Sir Donald Bradman, I was keen to do it. I never mind a project or a commission to write a song for a purpose, especially a cause or charity that I believe in, like the Goodbye Blinky Bill song to raise much-needed funds for the Koala Preservation Society in Port Macquarie. Ray had at last secured a rare interview with the Don to be televised on Channel 9. This was huge for Ray, as Bradman hadn't been interviewed on television before. Ray has always been a great supporter of my music, so I wanted to write something special about our cricket hero for the occasion. My first step for such a project was to ask Ray for maybe 12 things about Sir Don in order of importance. Wizard of the Willow was one saying that came up. I already knew a fair bit about the great man, and especially what he meant to Australians and to cricket. I also remember Mary Kay saying that her Auntie Ducky danced with Donald Bradman. Her great aunt, as you can imagine, dined on the fact all her life. Apparently it was when Sir Don went on a rare promotional tour for Mick Simmons' sports store. It was at some club that the dear lady had the privilege of doing the foxtrot with this world-famous man. Well, that was all I needed to kick off the song. The next line was, she said it was the highlight of her life. I knew that such a down-to-earth, humble emotion would grab the listeners. What woman wouldn't be blown away by the privilege of being held by Sir Don in his heyday? My daughter Amy was at the Conservatorium of Music studying opera at the time, so I thought she'll know some fine young singers to sing some lines to add a youthfulness to the song. It worked a treat in the studio. First, I had to sing the song simply called Sir Don on The Ray Martin Show. Thank goodness Ray and the audience loved it. But I never did get to meet Sir Don. His son John told me later on that his father never liked the old song, How Don Bradman, but he liked mine. God, I wish I'd written to him at the time and asked him what he thought, but that felt a bit pushy. When Sir Donald Bradman left us for the cricket ground in the sky in 2001, I was absolutely humbled to be asked to sing the song at his memorial service in Adelaide. The service was held in the St. Peter's Cathedral and was televised live. An estimated 60 million viewers tuned in to watch it. Sir Don had made a huge impression on cricket fans around the world, so viewers in Australia, India, Pakistan and England tuned in to pay their respects to the great man. I'm not good at memorials or funerals, so I kept myself well away from the cathedral until I was required. The television crew was outside the vestry. With makeup on and microphone stuck up my shirt, I tried to remain calm, telling myself I'm singing this for his family. Forget about it being live to 60 million people. My time for the song had arrived. The television crew directed me to the side door of the cathedral. The page boys were on their way over to lead me to the microphone and stool. I'm nervous again just thinking about it now. I was quite numb. The security person at the door said g'day and told me that my fly was open. My first reaction was, good one, mate. But I checked and sure enough, my fly was open. It was because I had to undo my belt to slip the microphone up my shirt and hadn't realised it had caused the zipper to slip down. I was so relieved, thinking I would never have lived it down. Imagine performing to 60 million people with my fly open. What a close one. After that, it all went like a breeze. Ever since that day, I have a habit of saying fly check to myself before I walk on stage. Unfortunately, as I get older and more vague, I find I'm occasionally very pleased that I do check. After the memorial service, there was tea and bickies in the pavilion. Prime Minister John Howard was there having the time of his life amongst so many cricket legends like Bill Lawry and Tony Greig. I ended up at the bar of our hotel with Greg Chappell, who surprised me with a lot of effing and comments about all sorts of effing things. He was much more down to earth than I expected. It amused me because he was such a refined batsman. I was absolutely delighted to have a yarn with him. Sir Don. When Auntie Ducky danced with Donald Bradman, she said it was the highlight of her life. That wizard of the Willows swept her off her feet, along with all Australians, every man on the street. Sir Don, you gave us pride in ourselves. Please come out for just one more parade. Sir Don, we're still in awe of your name. We know you'll shy away, but we'll honour you just the same, born a country boy, and we are proud. You built upon your legend with the power of your blade. You fought against the odds and put others in the shade. Let us ticker tape your cavalcade. Please come out just for one more parade. Hero of heroes, bold of the bold, you dignified the uniform, you blessed the green and gold. Let us ticker tape your cavalcade. Please come out just for one more parade.